It's been a minute since my last experience. And this morning at 6:23, now it's 6:24 a.m. in the morning, I am going to tell you about a brief but wow, what an experience. Oh my gosh, let me get into it. So, I was doing my usual, and I always like to go over this stuff for those of you who are curious. There'll be all kinds of people who will ask me or have asked me in the past what I do before I shift or before I astral project. And this is an interesting experience because I think this was somewhere in between, and I think you'll understand why as I explain the experience to you. So, like I said, I was up doing my usual thing. I was studying, actually studying Spanish and just going over some stuff. I think I I laid down and I closed my eyes it was exactly 5:30 a.m. actually, guys. It was 5:30 a.m. I remember that. I knew I was going to have about an hour just to lay down and relax. And for whatever reason, I had on storm sounds, by the way, for those of you who are interested. And for some reason, once I closed my eyes, I kind of decided to focus on my hand. Don't know why I did this. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure, but I was focused on my hand, and I was focused on a ball of light hovering above it. And in fact, there were two small spheres of light moving around each other, like revolving around each other. And then a bigger light would grow around that, and it would just hover above my hand. Not sure why that was, but I was focused on that. I was also focused on, with my other hand, pushing through space. And that's something that I've talked about before, this idea that I am pushing through the space, not outer space, but the space around me to push through to another reality. That's what I imagine. So I suppose that could be a technique, but that's one of the things that I imagine before when I'm thinking about doing it. And again, I kept my full attention on this as I was laying there. My full attention was there. Now, eventually, I hit that sweet spot, what I call the sweet spot, that middle place, the place between being asleep and awake. And as soon as I hit that space, this is something I've been thinking about. I've been thinking about space, and I've talked about this before, seeing planets, things like that. So I decided to focus on that. And that's actually what I thought I was going to see. I felt myself, of course, when I was in that middle space, beginning to lift out of my bed. Now, there are different ways that I transport. Sometimes I move in different directions. Sometimes I go off the side of the bed. And actually, I did actually go off the side of the bed this time. I started kind of lifting sort of into the air, and I moved off my bed, and then I went on to the floor. I was laying down back to the floor, and then I started gliding or moving forward. This was a forward motion, and these things happen normally in darkness when I'm in motion. Now, at some point, I began to see, goes back to this animation thing. You know, it's funny. I was seeing frames of animation all together. There were several frames put together. And I don't remember exactly what I was seeing within all of these frames. I know they were very colorful, and I was seeing that. And my mom and I have spoken about this, and we have a theory that it could be raw data. And when I say raw data, I mean raw data that makes up reality or makes up a reality. And the reason why I see it as animation is because, well, that is a sort of creation by animators of a reality. So maybe that's how my mind translates it. I've seen the animation thing enough times, guys, to kind of start to come to this conclusion that regardless, I think it's my perception of what the substance of what reality really is underneath everything, right? Underneath what we see in our 3D reality and what makes up a reality in general. So I'm seeing these frames, right, as I'm looking, and at some point I remember I saw the frames, I could see them, and then they vanished, they disappeared, and then they appeared again, and I was thinking, what? Am I going to go into one of these frames? I'm not sure. And then at some point I arrived in a version of my apartment. Now, for those of you who are reality shifters, you can think of this, I believe, as a WR or what they call a waiting room. Again, this has happened to me enough times when I've shifted to kind of believe that this is what reality shifters talk about when they talk about a WR. By the way, my apologies. You will have heard, I think, my alarm going off because it's like now it's 6:32 or something like that. So my apologies for that. So I was in this version of my apartment, and in this version, there were no computers that I could see, which was interesting. There were these little trinkets on my desk, which was really weird. My desk was a little messy in this version of it, or I suppose in my WR. There was one thing I remember on my desk, which was it was like a tiny blender. I have no idea what it was for. I saw this thing and I'm like, what is this? But I remember I was touching objects. I was touching everything again to confirm that, I shifted and, I'm here and I can feel these things. I even remember messing with the top of this blender. You could take the top off. Again, it looked like a blender, but it would look like a toy blender or something. It was really weird. It was really, really tiny. So I'm looking at this for just a little bit, looking at things on my desk, and then I decide to go outside. So I open the door and I step outside of this version of my apartment, and I start walking down the hallway. And as I'm walking, there is what I perceive to be a family. Now, this family was Asian, and there were two older people that I saw at first. And those are the people that I approached in the very beginning. And the first thing, of course, I was in this place, I was looking around in this hallway, and I decided to ask these people, what world was this? Where was I? What is this place? Now, when I approached them, and this is where, of course, I'm thinking that I've shifted someplace. When I start to speak to them, it appears that they don't see me or hear me. Like, not at all. Like, I'm waving my hands, I'm clapping, doing all these things. I'm like, hey, can you hear me? Can you see me? Nothing. It was like I wasn't there. And so I don't believe that this was an astral projection. I'm kind of cutting in here from this experience. I don't believe this was an astral projection. I do believe that this was a shift. But then again, these labels that we put on things, I so want to get away from that, because I think it all depends on the frequency. And for whatever reason, my belief is that when I was trying to contact or say something to these people, they couldn't see me because I was at a different frequency. They weren't able to detect me at all. It would be the same thing as if you were in the room with a spirit being and you wouldn't be able to see them because they were vibrating at a different frequency than you. If you were able to change your vibrational frequency, you would be able to perhaps match theirs, or they might be able to match yours. Now, I was at a different vibrational frequency than these people. So, they started walking away at one point, because I remember they were talking amongst themselves, and that's when I believe I approached them. And then I started waving, you know, whatever. I said, hey, hey, and they didn't hear me. Gosh, it's so, by the way, I've talked about this before. I do not like the fact, I've never liked being invisible. I used to think when I was a kid I would really enjoy it, but every time I'm invisible to someone, it's a weird, creepy feeling, and I don't like it because it's like you don't exist. It's very, very strange. For those of you, for those of you who are younger that may be listening to this and thinking, "Oh, how cool would it be to be invisible?" It's not cool. At least for me, it is not, and it's something that I've learned. So these people started walking back down the hall again. They're still talking. Speaking, by the way, they were speaking, I believe, Chinese. That's what my perception was, which was interesting. I actually recognized, or thought I recognized, that it was Chinese. I don't know if it was, by the way, for those of you who might be listening to me that are Chinese, I don't know if it was Cantonese or if it was Mandarin. And I know that those are at least two of many languages in China. There are many languages in China. Just saying Chinese is a very general thing. But I don't know if it was Mandarin or Cantonese. I can't be sure, but I'm pretty sure that it may have been one of those languages. That's what I was hearing. And when they started walking again, I don't know if I noticed this before. I can't say. I know it was a family, and I don't think I really noted the young boy that was with them. I believe that may have been their son, maybe. Again, this looked to me like a sort of a nuclear family, a mother, a father, and a son. And as I was walking, because I kept following them, these were the only people that I had seen. I kept following them, and as I did, I believe I noticed the boy was looking at me, or at least noticed me. And I remember at some point, the young boy said, "Yeah, I can see you," because I remember saying, "Can you see me? Can you see me?" And he said, "Yeah, I can see you." And I was like so relieved. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can ask this dude questions. Now, at some point, I believe we went outside and we separated from his parents. His parents were, if those were his parents, again, I'm assuming that that these were his parents. They may not have been his parents. For all I know, who knows what they were and what their true form was. But he started walking with me, and it was just him and I. And so I was like, okay, I get to ask questions as we were walking down a street. Like, for those of you who might be curious about what the surroundings look like, I don't think they were too different than they are here. And normally if there is a huge difference, I'll notice it. And I didn't notice that because I was so focused on him. So as we were walking, I asked him, I said, what is this world called? Now, he may have said what it was. I know I don't remember, but this is what I believe happened. And again, I like to be very transparent and very forthright about what exactly it was, what our conversation exactly was. I'll be paraphrasing things here because I can't remember exact words here and there. But I do believe he said something along the lines of, "It's about to burst," as in the world. And what he meant by that was the world was getting ready to end. This world, not our 3D world, guys, don't panic. But whatever world I was in was getting ready to end. It was going to end at any moment. And he told me that it was going to end. And I was like, wow. But, and again, we were walking. And by the way, I want to tell you, I don't remember all of our conversation, but what I do remember was there was a sense of such deep camaraderie and friendship with this person. I instantly liked this person. And if he told me his name, I'm so sorry I can't remember his name. Just saying. I really feel bad that I can't remember his name because I felt like I was so close to him in that moment. I even remember as he was saying this, as we were talking, that I kind of put an arm around him. He was like a brother or just someone really, really close to me. And we were just walking. And I remember saying, after he had told me that the world was going to end soon, or his world was going to end soon, I said, well, I'm sure you know how this works. And again, I had this sense that he was in some ways like me. He had knowledge that things don't really come to an end, that death is not really an end, that we go on. And I remember telling him, I said, you know, as I'm sure you must know, we go on. So you'll continue. You will continue to go on. And I remember also telling him that I would like it very much if we saw each other again at some point. So as if to say that whatever form that you come back into, I want to meet you again. You know, you were such a nice person. And I believe he totally agreed with that. And at some point, guys, as we were walking, things just went dark. And I believe that this was the end, as the end was coming to this place. And I remember, I believe, saying something about just how much of a pleasure it was to meet him. And that was it. That was it. I opened my eyes and I was like, wow. So that was the experience, guys. Thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. And until next time, take care.